All right, we got people coming on. Testing, testing. Everybody, just got settled in. How you guys doing? Hey, Kalie, I see you made it in. She's connecting to her audio. Ready. So I'm gonna start a chat here. Let's share where everybody is now. It's hard to say, especially with people traveling, where are you from, but let's share where you are now in the chat.
Julia, can you hear me? Okay.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay, great.
Yep. Hey, everybody.
So this is Kalie. She's going to be co-hosting with me. She's actually my current recruiter at MedTravelers. I'm excited to have her here. Let's see.
Hey, guys.
I can make you a host, Kalie. Okay.
I'm like,
actually,
I don't, where do I find the chat at?
Okay, so if you're, this is for everybody, if you're on Zoom and you kind of look at the bottom, do you see where there's options? There's mute, there's stop video, there's security, participants, chat, share screen.
There it is.
So click on chat and then it expands to the side. Otherwise it's usually hidden. Okay, so we got Tara from Miami. Kristen's in Michigan. Christina is in New Grad in Texas. Kalie's in Texas.
Yeah, we're in Texas.
Sarah.
I'm in Dallas as well, and it's Christine.
Ah. Oh, Christiane. Okay, awesome.
Cool. What part of Dallas, Christiane?
I'm in the design district. Where are you?
Okay, so I'm really outside of Dallas. Our office is in Capel, but we're working remote. So I'm like in HEB, Herschel Bedford.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it. Yeah, oh, you're far. Yeah.
Yeah, 30 minutes or so.
We got Julia from New York. Sarah's in Philly. Rachel's in Little Rock. There's a mix of people here. You want to share what discipline you are too? I'm an SLP. I feel like there's going to be a lot of SLPs here.
Plenty of jobs.
Yeah. Oh, Sarah's a PT. Okay, PTA. Just as I said, it's going to be a lot of SLPs. SLP.
There we go. There's an SLP. Yay for almost, yeah, Rachel almost graduating.
Yay.
Bet you're excited about that.
Oh, we have Rochelle is a CF SLP in Houston. That's exciting. Cool. Well, this is recording. Hopefully, maybe I can cut out the first part where I'm fiddling with the screen, but we are going to record this, and if all goes well, it'll upload probably to YouTube. So if you cut out early or you want to rewatch, I'll email the link out or post the link to watch this on YouTube too, is what we talked about. But I think we could probably go ahead and get started.
Yay.
Nick joined us. That's one of Kalie's travelers.
Hey, oh yeah. Hey, Nick, I see you over there. Yeah, 5 minutes ago. That's about right. He's already asking about outpatient jobs in Atlanta.
Well, you can explain to everyone how the process works.
Yep, that'll be great.
Are Kalie's other travelers here? Nick's here, I'm here. Anyone else who travels with Kalie, let us know before we get started.
Not that I see right now,
Okay.
But I don't know if I can see everybody on the screen, you know. Oh yeah, there's page 2. Oh yeah, okay. We usually use Microsoft Teams at work, so we don't use Zoom as much, but for all you SLPs that want to do interviews, a lot of the school jobs use Zoom.
Oh, that's a good tip to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something good to know skill-wise, which is another reason why I kind of started doing some webinars on Zoom too, and doing a little more on Zoom. We should all be pretty familiar with it for different reasons. So yeah. All right, well, I can pull up the slides we have and kind of get started with our presentation tonight, which is, it's a beginner presentation. We're talking about really how to get started as a traveler. So if you're already a traveler and you're here just for the fun and socialization, welcome. This will probably be a lot of information you've heard before. If you're new or thinking about traveling, it's going to be really helpful. We ask that you try not to talk, like use your audio during the session. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, and then at the end we'll open up to questions, which can be in the chat, or we could do a little more audio back and forth, but we'll try to keep it just to Kalie and I doing the presentation for the actual presentation part. So let me share my screen here. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
You give me like a thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah, I can see it. So hopefully everybody else can.
I guess we can do present mode. I don't use Google a lot. Okay. I don't use the Google slide a lot. I really like PowerPoint. Okay, so today we're gonna talk about getting started as a traveling therapist. And this is hosted by me, Julia Kuhn. I'm a traveling SLP, and Kalie Simmons, she's the manager of recruitment at MedTravelers, and she's actually my recruiter. So we're gonna introduce ourselves a bit in the next slides, but I'm the one in the pink, Kalie's the one in the tan. This is our introduction slide, I guess. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Julia. I started traveling back in 2010, and I had been a speech therapist about 1.5 years. And my big why for traveling was that I just wanted more time off, to be honest. I had spent all of my life up until that point really in school or working, and there wasn't any breaks, there wasn't any time off. And I felt like I finally had achieved so much. I got a good job. I was finally where I thought I wanted to be. And then I felt completely restricted by just the general 2 weeks off a year and working. I'm like, okay, I finally have money. I finally have like what I want to accomplish. Now I want to go places. I want to see things. And for me, travel just made sense because not only could I travel across the country and see different places all over, all the places I always thought I wanted to go to, but would take a lot of vacation days, but I could also take time off in between contracts. We're going to talk about how the contracts work and time off and pay works, but I was able to take a lot of time off in between contracts and travel for fun. So I'll talk a little more in like another 2 slides about some of the things I've accomplished with travel, but it truly has changed my life. And I've been doing this now on and off for over 10 years. And it's just something I love and I'm really passionate about. So I'm happy to share it with all of you. Kalie?
Yeah. So I have been with AMN for almost 8 years. I started out kind of as a recruiter, decided I definitely want to get into leadership too. So have kind of worked my way through that path. The last year has probably been the biggest growth curve in a lot of ways, just because pre-COVID, I was a director and I pretty much did only PT, OT, SLP, PTA, and CODAs. And that's all I staffed. It's what I just totally loved. And then it was like COVID hit. We had a big fluctuation in the job market and just demand. As you know, it was like therapy needs kind of halted for a little bit, and every client out there pivoted to more nurses and to more respiratory therapists, and budget and everything just reallocated to those frontline workers. And so when that happened, we saw a pretty big change in therapy. And so it was like, Kalie, put on a new hat and learn a whole bunch of other stuff. So the last year and a half, I kind of learned respiratory therapy and lab and sono and just a whole bunch of it, taught me a whole lot more because I was just so narrow focused. But then in the last few months, the therapy market has come back stronger than it was even pre-COVID. The SLP orders that we have is higher than it's ever been. Same with PT, almost the same for OT. So it just was like, I was happy in one sense, like, oh, yay, I get to like go back to all therapy. But just also, it's been a really cool experience to know so much about, different markets. So I am kind of now just, I don't know, winging it and booking a little bit of everything. And it's been pretty fun.
That's awesome. Well, we're happy to have you here because you're so knowledgeable, not only it sounds like now about therapy, but just staffing in general. You know a lot about staffing. You've been doing it a long time. So you're going to have really good input for the webinar tonight.
Yeah, I know just a thing or two.
So let's get started with what is travel therapy? What are we talking about anyway? So travel is when you work short-term contracts and they could be anywhere, hence travel. You're going to travel to new locations. The contracts are generally 13 weeks. For school contracts, they could be 9 months, although it could all vary. But the idea is that somebody needs staffing and they need it fast, and you're there to fill an immediate need. So it could be anywhere. It could be a SNF. Most of them are probably in SNFs. For SLPs, we have a lot in schools. Also can be outpatient, home health, inpatient rehab, hospitals. It could be anywhere for any facility, any place. Every facility may or may not, for one reason or another, need a traveler, whether it's a maternity leave or a seasonal staffing shortage, or it's just somebody's leaving and they need help now. So the way that agencies get involved is that they provide this temporary staffing to facilities ASAP. So if a facility knew somebody gave a 2-week notice and they needed to hire somebody themselves, it's going to take way more than 2 weeks to interview people, hire the right person, onboard somebody, credential somebody, get somebody in. So that's one of the reasons why they turn to these agencies, because we, in sense, we work for staffing agencies like MedTravelers or the other agencies out there, and they kind of do all of that beforehand and very quickly, so that we're just able to essentially show up when there is a need within a week or 2 weeks, whatever it is. We're able to show up quickly and start working. So then you're not working for yourself, you're working for an agency. So for instance, MedTravelers, which is where Kalie works for, is where I worked for the past couple of years. You're a basically W-2 employer, W-4 employer for them. You have access to their health insurance, their 401k, their liability insurance. You basically get full benefits while you're on contract. So the one thing you don't get though is pay time off. So if you work a contract and then you want to take some time off, or you even want to take time off while you're working, you don't get paid days off. It's pay for work. Then like at MedTravelers in particular, if you happen to have a break in between contracts, for up until 3 weeks, they'll cover 24 days, they'll cover your health insurance. And a lot of agencies do something similar. So benefits themselves might not end the day that the contract ends. You can hold on to them if you're working another contract, but benefits can vary. But in general, you're not working travel contracts for the great employer sponsored benefits. That would be something you might want in a perm job, because you're only getting paid when you're working. You don't have paid time off. And it can be high risk, high reward. You could show up to a contract and it could literally be canceled. You could show up and be told, we canceled it. And that's just a risk you take. It's kind of a risky career move to take, and you can have ups and downs, but the ups can be really awesome. Mm-hmm. So Kalie, anything you want to add on that, that piece? Yeah.
For sure. One thing, that I would definitely say about, so yeah, there is no PTO, and there are some companies that may, dress it up like, hey, we'll give you X number of PTO days if you worked for us one contract or two. A lot of times, that money still comes from somewhere. So, definitely be mindful of that. It could just be that, we take a little bit away from your weekly pay package and then say, hey, yeah, you are getting a couple of PTO days, but, most of the time it's not quote unquote free. But one thing that I like to tell travelers is there are times you can edit your schedule, still be paid in full, and still have time off. So what I would be talking about is, say you're doing 5 8-hour shifts, working 40 hours a week, and you want to go to a wedding and you want to be off maybe a Thursday to Monday. So, or maybe let's do a Friday through Monday. So you could technically you could do 4/10s, Monday through Thursday, as long as the employer allows. You can work your 40 hours in 4 days, be off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The following pay period, you'd be off Monday, but you could either work Tuesday through Friday, 4/10s, or Tuesday through Saturday, 5/8. You still have off 4 days in a row, and you hit your full hours, so you're still getting full pay. So there is that flexibility in travel, and it's something that I tell travelers, let's look at it. What time off do you need? How can we work it? Some clients are much more flexible than others. But a lot of times it's best just to run with your time off up front on the submittal. That way we can, make sure the client's aware and get it on the contract at the very beginning. And of course, if things come up, it's like a perm job, if you get sick or anything, things come up. It would go unpaid, but, you can be off if you need to be.
Yeah, totally. And on the next slide, I want to mention some just ways that travel's changed my life, because we kind of mentioned, okay, yeah, there's some risks, there's some rewards. So what's the benefit to doing travel? And that's me in Oahu, Hawaii. So it's a cool picture there. But here's some ways that travel's changed my life. And this is over the past 10 years. I've traveled to at least 15 countries in my time off from work in between assignments. Many I visited multiple times. I did like a month-long Spanish immersion program in Costa Rica and Mexico, where I was pretty fluent in Spanish. Things that I just never thought I would ever do in my life, I was able to do as a traveler, like take all this time off. I generally work like 9 months out of the year, take 2 or 3 months off for whatever reason, for rest, for travel, now I'm working on my own business. So I take a lot of time off for my own business, but it's really just changed my life in the way I look at work-life balance and working, and has made just huge strides to also preventing burnout. I think for those reasons, if you're only working 1 month, one place for 3 months, and then you have the ability to take some time off, you feel like your mental health can be better, and you can balance things more easier sometimes depending on your situation. So it's been great for the work-life balance. It's also can pay well, not always. So jobs are going to pay differently based on who's paying for you to be there. So each facility you work at will kind of set their rate of what they pay. So some pay really, really well. Some might not pay more than you make in a perm position, but I've been able to pay off at least $60,000 in student loans as I've been a traveler. And I definitely could have paid off a lot more if that was my priority and I wasn't taking so much time off. I've also worked in a lot of well-respected medical settings and advanced my career in ways I just knew I wouldn't have been able to as a permanent SLP. I started my career in Boston where the market for therapists was very saturated and they had very highly skilled people who were willing to work for very little money. And I just could not work for very little money at that point in my career. So I was really limited on where I could work, what places I could go to, how I could expand my skills. And travel allowed me to get out of that situation where already as a pretty much new grad clinician, I was kind of hitting my head against the wall and work at awesome places, grow my clinical skills, learn new things. And I know I wouldn't have been able to do that in just the situations I was in. I've also really been able to become an advocate for my patients, an educator to other therapists. And sometimes you might not realize if you work at the same place year after year after year, you only know what you know there and you don't know what you don't know. And if you're always hearing the same thing from your coworkers or the same thing from your boss and you have this groupthink attitude, you might be doing things that I've seen people do things that are straight up like unethical and wrong, and they're doing it because that's just how it's always been done. But as a traveler, when you go to all these other places, you can educate people and say, hey, this shouldn't be this way. I've been in a couple places where there was issues with fraudulent billing and things like that, and was able to handle the situations in a way that, number one, I could leave. If a situation is bad, I could leave. And number two, I could educate my coworkers and say, hey, like this isn't right. And we should all stand up for things like this, whether they want to listen or not. You can be an advocate for your patients and an educator to other clinicians. And now I'm currently using social media a lot to teach other people how to travel. And I've been growing a business around that and working to inspire other people, which isn't just unique to me. So many travelers I know that I see online and on different places on social media have also started businesses and side hustles and other things, transition to other things as they're traveling. And I think that's twofold. I think onefold, travel allows you to have a kind of flexible lifestyle. And if there's something you think you might want to pursue, you could take some time off and pursue it. And two, I think once you start traveling, you really get your mind out of the box and you start to see so many things are possible. And things I never thought were possible 10 years ago, I could see as possible now. And even if my goal was to do something completely different, I know there would be nothing stopping me. And travel has really helped me in that mindset. And I think a lot of travelers get in that mindset too. And maybe they even transition out of the field. Who knows? Like I think once you start traveling, you're just open to doing different things and experiencing new ideas. So that's kind of my deal on how travel's changed my life. And now we're going to get a bit more into the meat of things. And Kalie's going to describe, we talked about pay and how it can vary from place to place. So Kalie's going to talk about how exactly pay works as a traveler, because that's always one of the top questions, at least I hear.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of the biggest ones. And, the way we do pay is the majority of your money is bucketed into three categories. So you have your taxable hourly rate, and then you have your housing stipend and your meal stipend. There are going to be companies that do things differently in terms of like maybe travel reimbursements or license reimbursements. For us in particular, we have no cap on our license reimbursements, and our travel standard cap is 500. It's always negotiable. It's really going to vary on where you're going, how far, what the fill rate look like, all of that type of thing. Now, when we're first looking at jobs, there are going to be clients where right off the bat, we're going to know this is, you know, a health trust job. So it is a set bill rate. There is no they do not negotiate. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. A new grad or a seasoned therapist, your pay is going to be the same. The only variables being those, you know, things like insurance or travel. And then there's going to be jobs that have a range on their bill rate. So we get an order from the client and it says, you know, $5 range DOE, depending on experience. So we can, you know, hope for the best. And until we really get that interview and offer and know what side of the bill rate they're going to offer us on, then I can give you a range, you know, and I say, hey, this job is going to pay somewhere between $1,550 to $1,650 a week after taxes. And then there are also going to be jobs that are a bidding system. So certain clients, they send us a bill rate, and if they interview and offer a clinician within 24 hours, we have to discount that bill rate. If they do it within 48 hours, we have to discount a little bit less, but basically it's, you know, they're trying to book our clinicians for us very quickly, but in turn, we have to incentivize them and lower that rate a little bit. So I guess we'll answer questions here in a little bit.
Kalie, what would you say is like the average, like what should a traveler kind of expect to take home? Say start from like the very lowest to maybe the very highest, and then maybe what's about an average that they could expect weekly?
For sure. So we have jobs, some SNF chains are very low paying, and they have fees that come off of those jobs. They're called vendor management systems. So they take a piece of the pie. And so in some of those jobs that are super low paying, you can make as low as $1,350 to $1,400 a week after taxes as a PTOT SLP. Kind of those rates are uniform for SNF clients. That range can go all the way up to about $2,000 a week after taxes. So some of those are going to be your home health jobs in California that, you know, cost of living is a little bit higher, bill rates are a little bit better. But there's also going to be jobs that are in the middle of nowhere, you know, South Dakota or something, that will also pay about $2,000 a week. So it doesn't always compare to cost of living. I know Julia could speak to that about Hawaii. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go to Hawaii. It's so expensive there. I'm going to get paid really well. And it's really not that way. These clients in Hawaii, most of them, not all of them, they know that a traveler is going to take their job. So the rates are actually not very high. So, you know, I kind of tell travelers, hey, if you want to go to Hawaii, you have to think of it as a 13-week vacation. Don't plan to save a lot of money, and maybe you still can depending on your budget, but, you know, just think of it as this is a once in a lifetime experience. This is not the job that's going to pay off all my loans or, you know, whatever it is your why is for traveling, but just totally, you get to be on an island and explore all kinds of stuff that I have yet to even see. So that's pretty awesome. But the real fundamental behind it is that we follow GSA.gov, which is the government website that tells us the stipend allocations that we can give you for a particular city. So, you know, if you're going to San Diego, it's going to tell us what the per diem, the meals and the housing, the limitations are for that particular city. Now, that's not a city that we're ever going to be able to max out your housing and meal stipend, because it's just the rates are astronomical. Whereas you could go to a place in small town Oklahoma and the GSA stipends will be probably $96 a day for housing, and it'll be $51 to $54 a day for meals. So if the bill rate is really good there, then you might max out your housing and get $672 a week tax-free for housing. You might max out your meals, which would be about $385 a week. And then we have your taxable hourly rate minimum at $21.50, and we have leftover money in, you know, your pay package. So where we're going to put it is into that taxable hourly, which will raise it up from $21.50 to maybe $24 or $25 or, you know, whatever it is. But those three figures are the way that your weekly pay is combined to kind of make your paycheck breakdown. And, you know, it's just really so variable. based off of where you're going, what client it is. We have some very, very generous clients. And then we have some like school systems or outpatient clinics that they're very tightly budgeted. And whether that's the school board determining, what they can allocate, or if it's just, a privately run clinic somewhere where it's a single owner and, they'd love to have a traveler help build their business, but budget isn't quite there, then you may get, something a little bit lower. But, if it's in Denver or Colorado Springs or somewhere where people really want to go and the jobs don't come up often, then it's like, it's a no-brainer. Yeah, let me do it. So it really just totally depends on, several different factors. But I think the other big thing is having a recruiter that's transparent enough to talk about it. I'm happy to discuss bill rates and what they are, I can pull up orders and say, hey, this one is a 60 minus a 4% fee. So you're looking at the upper 50s on a bill rate. That is not a good bill rate. It's not going to pay you well. But if it's Seattle and you have family there and you really want to get to Seattle, then, let's do it. And, where on the flip side, hey, this job is a $75 bill rate. It's exclusive to us. We have no fees attached to it. You can make a lot of money here. We can have those conversations, but you just want to understand where your pay is going and, how it's broken down, because I think that really is the most confusing piece for a lot of people scared to jump in. Like, am I going to owe taxes at the end of the year? Do you withhold them for me? We do. You're not a 1099. You're not going to owe money at the end of the year, but those are just a lot of fears or concerns that do come up.
Does anybody have questions now on how the pay works? I can see the chat now. Does anybody have questions about that, how it works? Or Kalie was saying, it's like, we for the most part, we don't have room to change a lot. These facilities set their rates within maybe within a $5 range, and we submit and we more or less kind of have to take what we're offered with some exceptions, and pay it's market. It's a market. It's, if a place doesn't, if a place knows they're going to hire a traveler easy peasy like white, they won't offer a lot. They don't have to. If a place knows they have to pay a lot to get somebody, or maybe they have to pay a lot to get somebody really skilled, then they're going to do it. So the pay kind of, it's not going to matter how many years experience you have. You don't go up in pay over time. You can go up, down, up, down.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's really the important thing too, is because, a lot of times people think, this is my third or fourth assignment, or maybe I even have some seasoned people like Nick, that have worked several years, and then they're like, what? This offer is the worst I've ever had. And it's, it's not that we're withholding pay. It's not that you don't even deserve it. It is just truly, that's what the bill rate is. And, for the clients that are more negotiable, then of course it's our job to get you as much as we can. And that's one of my favorite parts about the job really is, going back to a client and giving them reasons to give us more money. And sometimes that's even outside of our contract terms. But it's really just not, you can't ever be in that mindset of like, unless you're purely telling your recruiter, hey, I'm going for the highest paying jobs every single time, send me the top 20. I have travelers like that. So I know better than to send them a low paying bill rate job because they're not going to take it. So no need to waste his time, her time or my time. Where on the flip side, you are going to have travelers that are just purely driven for the experience or a particular setting. I have a couple travelers that just love peds. There are not a lot of peds jobs. So they'll go wherever the peds jobs are and they'll take whatever the peds jobs pay. So it's really you figuring out, why you would be traveling. Is it to pay off a bunch of loans? That's what I hear the most, pay off loans, put away money for a house, just like to be able to have a little bit more financial freedom. Whereas some people are all about the adventure. And I have travelers that homeschool their kids. They do, the whole RV life, they camp. It's just like, that's what I guess is so cool about it, really, is all the flexibility behind it.
No, you nailed it there. And the RV brings up a new point, which is we want to talk about how does housing work. We talked about how pay works. So some of the pay that we get as travelers is going to go towards our housing. So as a traveler, you more or less need to find your own housing. So I'll mention option one here up on the slide. So as a traveler, you have two options. One, your agency can find housing for you. So they hold the housing reimbursement out of your pay, what they need to find you housing, and then they secure the housing and take care of all that. Now you might be thinking, well, why wouldn't I just do that? It sounds so easy. Well, because those numbers we just mentioned, those like $1,300 a week, $1,600 a week, $2,000 a week, they all include the housing stipend reimbursement and a reimbursement for meals and incidentals. And that is a bulk of our pay. So if you have your agency provide housing for you, and again, they're not going to be thinking like what you're thinking. They might just think, I want to get the easiest thing I can do. And if that is a $4,000 a month hotel stay, that's what I'm going to book. So when your agency books your housing, you're kind of at their will, and it's going to be a lot more expensive than probably what you would end up finding, which is most travelers opt for option two, finding housing yourself and receiving a housing stipend. And then you have opportunities to live the lifestyle you want to as a traveler as far as housing goes. You can do van life, you can do RV, you can find furnished rentals on Furnish Finder is my number one go-to site. I like Furnish Finder because they're specifically designed for healthcare travelers. So the hosts and landlords that sign up knowing they're gonna host healthcare travelers and that's their deal, they like it. Versus Airbnb, I feel like sometimes there's just weird vibes, like, I mean, on Airbnb, you might have to email or message like 10 people and maybe you would get a couple back that could be interested. But I always feel like on Airbnb, people are like, well, why would I rent monthly or like lower my rates to rent to you a little more than Furnish Finders? And of course, you can always find gems. You could always find really good deals in Airbnb, can find good or bad deals in Furnish Finders. But those are kind of my top two websites for finding housing. And then you can also stay at hotel chains that have kitchenettes, like Extended Stay America, Marriott. They're all hotel chains that they'll have kitchenettes. They have, like, Marriott has certain brands that has kitchenettes and like studio apartments, and they'll offer discounted monthly rates. And pending where you are, it may or may not be more than a one-bedroom apartment. I know when I worked in Houston, I was paying, I think, $1,500 a month for a one-bedroom apartment, and I found out my coworker was renting an extended stay hotel for like $700 a month. So pending where you are, it could be cheaper, it could be more expensive. Some people prefer the hotel life. You get housekeeping, you get linens, you get usually coffee in the morning. Some people want their own place. Some people want to live with roommates. Roommates can be really beneficial in traveling. They can be your social connection to where you are. They can help you with cooking. They can kind of be your family. Some people want to live alone. So those are all things you don't get to decide if the company picks housing for you, but if you find your own housing, you get to determine what you do. I also mentioned your VBRO, Vacation Rental by Owner. That can be a solid place to find housing too. I haven't been successful on it, but I know other people who have. And then just Facebook groups. So if you search on Facebook for travel nurse housing, make sure you put the travel nurse part. We're always welcome, always included in travel nurse groups. Or even just local like marketplace groups. If you're going to Sacramento, look for Sacramento housing. You can find rentals on Facebook. However, any place like Facebook or Craigslist, you want to be aware of scams because those are going to be your unsecure places. So if somebody is listing their property online, on Airbnb, on Furnish Finders, on VBRO, you know that those places all require basically proof of ownership of the property in order to put it online versus Facebook, we get scammers. But there's also a lot of other creative ways to find housing, and I actually have a whole like 1-hour mini course on housing and scams. I'm going to do a presentation on it at the Travelers Conference this year. If you get to the point in your travel career where you want to dig into housing, we totally have a lot more resources, but these are kind of the beginner basics for housing. Do you have anything else to add, Kalie, about housing?
Yeah. So from a company perspective, we do offer, for you to take our housing if you want. And sometimes I encourage it for new grads if they're going somewhere where I already know right off the top of my head how that housing can be difficult. Then sometimes it's just like, take the pressure off, I'm going to do credentialing, and it's the first contract, I'm not going to make as much, but it just makes sense. And there's just certain places that are notoriously difficult, like the Cape in Mass. I for the first time, just in 8 years in this job, had a team that was like, yeah, I'm going to take AMN's housing, they'll find something. We could not find anything. We outsourced it to a third party like company, and I've just never even had that happen before. And so I was like, wow, like sometimes there are very difficult places, or just places that are so through the roof that who could afford it, But when you do our housing, the standard is we'll charge you for a fully furnished 1-bedroom with bills paid for that particular city. So sometimes there's seasonality or, variability. I know like when fires in California happened, I mean, we just had housing spike through the roof in certain areas. And so then some of our like pay packages were not quite right because overnight it was like there was just a housing shift, But overall, it's a good option if you're worried about cancellation fees. If you're in our housing, AMN does, if they cancel you week 4 and we've already paid the lease, that we don't charge you guys that back money. That's kind of something we have to write off as a loss. So that is a little bit of a perk. But on the flip side, it typically is more expensive, and if you're traveling with a pet, you'll have a pet deposit that comes from you and your paycheck. And it's usually not much, what, $300 or $400 or something, but just, something to at least think about. But we have a housing department to where we have so many travelers on assignment, and especially our nurses. A lot of them travel solo, and there are single females out everywhere. And so their goal is to get you as close as possible to the facility in a safe area. And so if there is more than one option, then they'll tell you, hey, here's a couple of open leases that we have. Is there one that works better for you? And then on the flip side, you could be going somewhere where we have no open leases, and, I ping housing and I'm like, hey, what do we have in this area? We have nothing. We're going to have to research it. So it will likely just be whatever they come up with, and, you don't have a lot of opportunity to choose. So, those are kind of the gives and takes of it, but doing the stipend once you do get a little more comfortable in travel is what about 95% of our travelers do. And they just get so savvy on social media, and mainly the Facebook groups, I would say. You guys find these little like gems, and then you share them with your favorite travelers, and then, those places always get booked.
Yeah. No, it's true. Can you hear me okay? I was having some trouble hearing you on that one, Kalie.
Yeah, I can hear you good. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, it sounds good. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, I was cutting out a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, cool. But in the chat earlier, we saw some people are new grads or newer grads. So one thing we definitely wanted to talk about was, can you travel as a new grad? And you totally can. Even as a SLP clinical fellow, you can travel. As a CF, your options would be pretty limited, mostly the schools. And in my opinion, there's pros and cons to traveling as a new grad. Something I just want to say that I've been thinking a lot about lately is that you are never too old to travel. And I hear so many people say, if I don't travel as a new grad, it's never going to happen. but you seriously have your whole career ahead of you. And even if you think you're gonna put roots down and settle down, things change. Some of the most badass travelers I ever met are in their 60s. Like, you can literally travel at any time in your career. So if it doesn't happen as a new grad, it can always happen. But you can totally travel as a new grad. Some, the pros and cons, people can kind of argue this back and forth all day, whether you'll have more mentorship on a travel position or if you're going to do a perm position. In my experience, everywhere I've worked as a traveler has really thrown you into the job with like little or no training. So I could never see myself traveling as a new grad, and I didn't. I was a newer grad. I traveled about a year and a half after I started working. But for my first job, I know I benefited from having that permanent experience, but some people really thrive in the travel world as new grads. So AMN has a mentorship program for new grads that places you with an experienced clinician to support you over the phone. And yeah, Kelly can talk about that too, and what they offer as far as new grads.
Yeah. So I totally tell, I usually, when I'm on a screen with a potential traveler and I just kind of get to know them and ask them a couple questions, that's when I can tell personality wise, if I think it would be good for you, because there are sometimes travelers are like, no, tell me straight up. This is how I am. This is what I like, blah, blah, blah. Would I be good in travel?
Awesome.
And I am very much because Julia's right. Like, a lot of facilities, you're full blown into the job by day 2, like you just are. They might orient you for a couple hours day 1. Now, there are some one-offs like Kaiser in California. They do extensive training. They'll, spend a couple weeks, make sure you're good to go. There's home health agencies like BJC. I have a team there in Missouri right now, and they're 2 weeks into training. They haven't gone out on their own yet. So you're going to have those one-off clients that will be fully supportive of you. And unfortunately, that's just not even half of the jobs. So you really want to be somebody that can kind of hit the ground running, not afraid to ask questions, can just kind of wing life sometimes, like you don't know where the supplies are at the facility. You're going and finding and doing, and just being okay with that, sometimes teaching yourself. And so that is why, for me personally, when we have a list of, new grad friendly facilities that we love, where we want to send new grads. So when I know somebody really needs some hand holding or, wants a very good mentorship, I kind of go to those facilities and I look and see, are any of them open? Are they on our list? Do we have a traveler there now that maybe won't extend, that we can backfill, put you in when they end, or maybe overlap you with that traveler for a week so you can have a little bit more grounding in the role and all of that. But those are the things I really will look for, because it's just, sometimes we don't know. We've never placed a traveler there, or maybe the hospital or the skilled nursing was bought out, and so it's under new management and leadership. And we had people there a year ago, but now it's under a whole new bunch of people that you're just gonna have to get in there and hope for the best, kind of. But what I just try to tell travelers is, as long as you can adapt, as long as you have that flexibility to be able to say, hey, this isn't right. I'm actually not okay with this. And you're not afraid to speak up, and you just can call your recruiter and say, I'm overwhelmed. What do I need to do from here? Here's what's going on. That's where it's my cue to loop in our clinical management team, or to, we have our mentorship program, and you can reach out to those people that we pair you up with and say, hey, what would you do if you were me? Or did you ever experience this? Or how do you recommend I approach, my director and discuss this scenario? Because you maybe don't want to step on toes week 2, and you want to, you want to be as or what do you call that? Solution oriented. You don't want to just be pointing out problems and not have a solution. But you want to say, hey, I'm feeling like my caseload is a little bit too high. Is there a way that you can help me better manage it? Or, you know, your EMR system, I'm confused. Or, you know, there's just so many things that can come up, but you have got to be the type to be vocal, tell us when you need help, tell the facility when you need help, and just also be open-minded that places can change. You know, sometimes it's like somebody was supposed to be there, and then I had a scenario where it's a great facility. I've had several people there, and then my new grad that was showing up there, she was going to be covering a maternity leave, but the therapist ended up going early, and so she didn't get that 2-week overlap, and she was just totally panicked, like, I am the only OT. What am I going to do? Yeah, so I think, you know, there are plenty of different scenarios of things that can happen, but as long as you can, you know, just kind of be open-minded and have fun with it, then you'll love it, because it's going to be a good experience as long as you find a recruiter that has your back and a company that you love. It'll be a good experience. It really will.
Absolutely. We're nearing the end now, so we have a couple more things to talk about, but if you're thinking about questions you want to have answered, make sure you put them in the chat. But now we're going to go through, after we answered all these common questions, just how does this whole process work? We talked about things like pay, like housing, like jobs. So what do you actually have to do? I can talk about the first couple here and pass it off to Kalie. So first up, you want to do what you're already doing now, which is doing research about the process, connect with companies, connect with travelers, connect with recruiters. You want to find out about the whole process and be educated. I'd recommend finding probably 2 or 3 companies or recruiters that you think you want to work with and kind of going down the next couple steps with them. The next step being creating a profile. So getting your resume, your skills checklist, your references, all that done with the agency so that you're ready to, they can submit you when a job comes up. And then you want to start, step 3, you want to start getting serious about submitting to jobs. Once your resume is done, your skills are done, skills checklist, you want to start talking to your recruiter and saying, hey, I'm seriously ready to go at this time. And you want to lay out what you're looking for. So you want to lay out, like, I'm traveling because I want to go to this location, or maybe you want this pay, and have these conversations with your recruiter where you talk about what you want, because they also might tell you what you want is unrealistic. And Kalie can definitely speak to that, but a lot of what we want, unfortunately, just isn't possible. I would like to make huge dollars working in Hawaii. I would like to work a contract in New York City. Like, there's just not going to happen. There's just some places that don't need us, that don't pay for us. But start getting serious about looking for jobs, submitting to jobs, and you can submit to as many jobs as you want to. The nice thing with MedTravelers is they actually have an app now. It's called the AMN Passport. So you can look at what jobs are open there and actually, like, press you want more information, and your recruiter will talk to you about the job, or you can even set it up with them that they just submit you. So that's what I was doing with Kalie on, like, my last jobs, because honestly, like, I am hard to get a hold of on the phone. I don't, like, it's hard to get a hold of me. So I can't be calling a recruiter and talking to the recruiter asking about jobs all the time. So I like that I can go on the app and search for jobs. And if something stands out to me, then I could talk to Kalie about it and she could submit me. But those are kind of your first processes. You want to do research, find recruiters, find an agency or 2, and then get serious about submitting to jobs for those agencies. And then the whole interview process begins. Kalie, you want to talk about the interview and the job offer?
Yeah, for sure. So, we've come to the part of, like, woo, we get to submit to a whole bunch of jobs. And I'm the type of person that is like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like, I will submit you to as many jobs as you want. Just let them be jobs that you're actually interested in, So hop on the app, send them over to me, send you the breakdowns on them. But then the interviews come. And, about I'd say it's 50-50. Half the time they will set up a formal interview. And so like they're calling me, I don't know, tomorrow at 2. And then on the flip side, it's just, hey, my phone's ringing. I did submit to a job in that state. That might be them, and you're winging it. And so I usually send newer travelers a list of new interview questions, just so you have something. I tell you, like, put it on the notes in your phone or whatever, text your best friend with it. And that way you can just quickly, I don't know, answer the phone if you don't want to miss it, if it's like San Diego or Seattle or whatever.
Sorry to interrupt, Kalie. Can everyone just make sure they're on mute? I'm hearing some feedback. Make sure you're, Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, answer the phone. Or if you miss it, they're probably going to leave you a voicemail and you can call them back, and that's fine too. But just sometimes I think people think it will be super formal, but it's not always. And I'm sure Julia has had interviews like that where they're like, oh, hey, we got your profile. When can you start? Okay, see you then. Bye. And you're like, well, what? I have questions.
Yeah, you as a traveler, you mostly have to lead the interview. This is the only opportunity you have to decide if you're going to pick up and move 1,000 miles and work at a place for 13 weeks. So you have to be the one asking a lot of questions, because for the most part, most places will just want to hire you because you have a license.
Yeah.
There are competitive jobs and there is competition and there is a lot of skill to the interview, but you definitely have to come prepared to interview the place itself.
Yeah, definitely. So always have questions, and just, be informed, because so often I think travelers get intimidated by the interview process, and you have to remember that they're not just interviewing you. You are also interviewing them, and you want to get your questions answered. Like, oh, hey, no, I'm not done. I have a couple more things to ask you. And sometimes it's like the coolest interviews ever. And you're just like, wow, I totally jived with that director. I totally want to work there. Cancel out all my other jobs. Let's go for it. And then on the flip side, you're going to have those rare occasions where, like, I know Julia for Stanford, they're so particular, and they're going to decline 5 SLPs before they see Julia's profile, and they're like, woo, we'll call her. So you're going to have sometimes where you might answer the call and they're like, oh, hi, we have 3 people in the room, so it's our supervising PT or our I don't know, just totally random, and you're like, oh my gosh. And they ask you actual questions about, maybe patient populations you've dealt with, or, do you have heavy neuro experience? Tell us about it. Or, just, I don't know, stuff that comes up and I'm like, oh, well, vestibular stuff wasn't in order, or, just things where travelers call me and they're like, hey, I had no idea it was like that, but I want the job. Or, whoa, that's way over my head and I would be the only SLP, or, whatever, I'm not sure I could do it. So that interview process can be a little crazy. But then you get offers, and that's where you may get one offer. Yeah, you may get one offer and want that job. You may get 5 offers and not really be sold on any of them. And for me, I'm a gut person. So I am very much like, if it feels right, it probably is. If you're having to talk yourself into it, then why settle? But I understand, sometimes people just can't wait any longer. Or they, love the area because family's there, their best friend or whatever. So even though the job doesn't sound totally perfect, they're inclined to take it. But those are things that you kind of weigh out. I say, make a list of pros and cons, or, whatever it is you need to do. But that's really the part where it gets super fun, because sometimes you can pin offers up against each other, not in a bad way, but in a way of, hey, Kalie, okay, I have these 3 offers and I really want this one, but would they do what this one over here is doing? I mean, that's the negotiating part. It's fun. And as long as that's not on an order that said on the front end, set, rate, non-negotiable, yada, yada, then we can totally go back to the client and be like, what can we do here? She really wants your job, but can you make it more lucrative? Or can you offer a 40-hour guaranteed work week? Currently it's at a 35. If so, we're happy to sign the contract today. So there's just kind of that variability, but then starts credentialing. So Credentialing can be a little bit overwhelming. It can take a couple weeks depending on where you're going. Invasive background checks, drug screens, physicals, flu shot, TB tests, COVID tests. And I will never forget booking Julia for the first time. Credentialing reached out to me. I swear she got booked. I mean, she booked and was cleared for this job in like 5 days. And credentialing reached out to me and was like, this is a unicorn. Like, I don't know why every traveler doesn't do it like she does, but she went the next day for medical. She submitted all of her forms online. Like, she's cleared, and she was a brand new traveler to us. So
I'm good at credentialing. I have a process for that.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if she has tips there, but she was one that they just raved about. Like, oh my gosh, miracles. So that's kind of the most boring part of all, but you don't have to do that every assignment. Really, it's that initial onboarding that's the most invasive, I would say. And then, of course, whenever you're on assignment, yeah, you get to decide, like, hey, Kalie, I want to extend another 13 weeks. Or, hey, we're halfway through the assignment. I really want to go to these 3 places next, or, you know, whatever it is. But I would say most of our jobs, probably almost 90% of them, book within 4 weeks of the start date. So starting out 6 weeks from your start date, you may not get a ton of traction that first week or two getting interviews and offers, because to clients, that's like, oh my gosh, you can't start till mid-July, you know, and it seems so far away, even though it's really not, because a lot of these jobs really are ASAP starts. They're like, can you be here on Monday? So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. It looks like we have a lot of questions coming in too. So we have a couple more slides. This is going in with all that stuff we just talked about like interviewing and the process. One thing you definitely want to do is make sure you get an interview and your resume stands out and you get the opportunity to even apply for these jobs. Like, I don't know, like Kalie mentioned, like sometimes my resume gets through HR and stuff when nobody else's does. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm a more skilled clinician, but I'm definitely more skilled at writing resumes and interviewing and stuff like that. And so one thing to remember is that in a lot of these big systems, our resume is read first by ATS, which is an automated system that reads resumes. And before a human ever sees your resume, it might have to go through the computer. And the computer is just looking for specific keywords, basically. So my main resume tip is I want you to make sure that you have listed number one, every single place you worked, and that you have a solid skills section on the top of your resume, a professional skills section that lists all of your skills. And you think about any keyword that's going to be important for your job, whether you're a speech pathologist and it'd be modified barium swallow study or tracheostomy or like PT/OT, I don't know what you would say, like lymphedema, whatever the keywords are that you would think an employer would want to see, make sure they're written somewhere on your resume and spelled out, not abbreviated. You could spell it out and put the abbreviation in parentheses next to it, but make sure it's spelled out. And you also want to do the same with documentation systems, because a lot of these hospitals just want to know, like, do you know Cerner? Do you know Epic? So write out what documentation system you have experience with, and you can say for how many years. I have a special section in my resume just for that, and make sure that gets on your resume. These are all things that you want to go on your resume, also like patient populations, diagnoses, just to make sure they get at your resume, actually get seen by a human. You get through the ATS system. Then if your resume gets seen by a human, they're impressed with all these skills. And some of it may be things that you think is a no-brainer. You're like, well, of course I used Rehab Optima, or of course, like I'm a swallowing therapist. Of course I know dysphagia and I worked with like stroke patients, but just make sure that you have it on your resume. Any other tips, Kalie?
No, I mean, I'm really big on EMRs, list all of them. Like,
Yeah.
and, you know, Julia said, some hospitals, that's just like an immediate trigger. Or if you have teaching hospital experience, level 1 trauma, you know, put that stuff. Always have your licenses. They love to see, because a lot of times we submit with license pending or something like that. So once you have it, have the numbers on it. And then, yeah, just what you're comfortable with. If you're a school-based therapist, you know, what caseloads have you seen in schools? 50 to 55, like, what have you dealt with? Autism, IEPs, you know, just, there's so many different things. But if you're an outpatient and you got dry needling certified or something, throw it on there. The more detail, the better, because I can kind of work with that, create a cover page. I, you know, put my own little blurbs on a lot of profiles anyway before I submit it, because we're taking out what's in your resume and implementing it into our electronic system, which is how we communicate with all of our clients. So it's, you know, kind of exporting all this information, you know, sending over to them, and they can just quickly skim and be like, oh yeah, this clinician is exactly who we want. Or, hey, you know what, these three both look like they have a very similar skill set. Who can start the soonest, or who's already licensed? So, you know, just having a lot of that really good info. I think sometimes people think I can put too much on there. Not really. I can always weed it out if I don't think it needs to be in there or something. But just having worked with so many of the same health systems over the years, it's like we know what they're looking for, you know.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And yeah, so, and again, you brought up a good thing to mention, which is, as we send our resume, it doesn't get directly inputted to the job. So I send my resume to Kalie. Kalie, do you actually do the copy and pasting, or do you guys outsource it to VAs now?
Yeah, so we have a recruitment specialist team, and they'll do a lot of the profile updating. But before I submit any candidate, I check the profile. Like, I make sure, you know, that any updated resume stuff that they've sent me, that it is definitely in there, because that's our one shot, you know? So if the right information isn't in there, it doesn't get flooded over. I had a scenario where it was like, I had a traveler and there was a duplicate, you know, had a very common name. And so somehow they both got put into my name, and it was like, wait a second, you know, which traveler is this? I'm about to RFO, that's what we call request file out. I'm about to submit this candidate to the client. And then I'm like, is that the school he went to? And then I start clicking through the profile, and I'm like, wait, what? So then I click out, and I'm like, this is the wrong guy altogether. So yeah, I'm very big at, just, it's important to double, triple check everything, and make sure that all the information is in the profile, because they could kick it back to us too and say, hey, we need it to show this on it and it doesn't, please resubmit.
Yeah, and even like all the more reason to, because so many people handle your resume, just to make sure that everything kind of stands on its own and you have all the key information there. For sure. Okay. Oh, I'm excited for this. We're going to talk about the current state of the travel therapy market. Kalie, this is all you.
Yep. So right now, PT, OT, SLP demand is higher than really it's ever been in the 8 years I've been here. So we saw a huge decline when COVID hit for about 6 to 9 months or so. And then it's like coming back, it's exploded. So we have we've got about over 700 PT jobs right now. I think today it was about 265 OT, and I mean, just a ton of SLP jobs. So almost 4 digits there.
Wow.
And it is heavy school for SLP, but also a ton of SNF. So those are really going to be your 2 main settings that we have for SLP. So I have travelers that only want acute care, and they're an SLP and they want to just do acute or inpatient rehab. Those jobs are less. So of the 900, you're talking like maybe 40 of them across the country are acute or inpatient rehab, something a little more specific. You'd have to be more open-minded there. For OT, it's honestly a little bit of everything. So 20% SNF, maybe 30% SNF, and 20% acute, and 20% home health. And, it's just kind of, you can dabble in everything in OT. For PT, it's, oh my gosh, it's just crazy. I feel like every day I'm like, oh my gosh, how are we going to book all these jobs? About 250 of them are outpatient at least. maybe another, I don't know, 150 SNF and a ton of home health, and not many schools for PT, just a handful, and not a ton of PEDS in either PT or OT. I would say less than 10. And then you have some travelers that they get real specific. They want some like a lymphedema job, or they want pelvic floor health. Those are even fewer, like you're talking maybe 2 to 3 across the country. So you would have to really be gung-ho to just go to Wisconsin if you want to do lymphedema, or, you know, whatever it is. But it's just the craziest we've ever seen it. So there is an OT compact that's coming, hopefully, I mean, maybe 2022, maybe before then. I don't know if they've rolled out like officially when it's going to hit legislation wise. PT, the compact, gosh, there's probably close to half the states involved in it now. It's incredibly awesome. You can get a license in an hour. It's cheaper. It's just so much better. It opens up a whole bunch of opportunity with way less licensing headaches. So that's a really, really great thing too. And then travel teams. We have a ton of people that travel together. It's something that me and another recruiter at AMN, Kimberly, we have a team for a couple years now, and we just decided to dive into it a couple years ago. We were both always getting team referrals, and sometimes I was in leadership meetings, or, you know, just I have kiddos, she has kiddos. If I'm away, she's at her desk, you know, vice versa. And it was like, I don't know, 2 sets of eyes is better than one. You know, I know geography so well to where I'm like, oh, that job pairs with that job. And Emma's kind of the opposite, where she would just, I mean, she will like stay up all night and source a second position in a 50-mile radius so we can book a team, you know? And so we started like just deciding, let's do this as a duo. We have about 26 or maybe 27 teams on assignment right now. We love it. It's what a lot of our reps know us, you know, like, oh gosh, Kalie and Kim, what team do they have? Like, or I really need a team here. Kim and Kalie, you know, give me somebody. But it's like now is better than, I mean, the opportunity to travel with a friend or, you know, significant other. The options are just fill up a whole email. I'm like, well, where do you want to go? You want to see all of them? Okay, let me pair all these up. And you can do an OT with an SLP, or 2 PTs, or, you know, 2 SLPs. It's a really crazy, and you can work at the same schools or hospitals or SNFs. You can work separate, you know, but it's just something where I think, especially maybe even before a year ago, it was harder. You had to bend a little bit. You know, you didn't have as many options, but now we're like, we have way more team jobs than we even have teams. And so, you know, I just think, yeah, just to know is a possibility if, you know, you think that you don't want to take the leap solo, but you want to maybe with somebody else that will go with you.
No, it's such a good time. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, it's such a good time for the market. Now is really a time where we can do anything. So it's a great time to travel, and even with a friend, like this is such a different story than what we were saying a year ago. So now we're going to close out. We're each going to say our top tips for new travelers. Then we have a bunch of questions here to answer too. So maybe we'll take another, hopefully get wrapped up in 20 minutes here. But Kalie, what are your top 4 tips for new travelers?
Yeah. So, of course, first and foremost, find a recruiter that you love. Get recommendations on like Facebook, or just through maybe alumni people at your school that have maybe taken the leap and traveled. But do your research and just talk to several companies and find out, you know, see who it is you jive with. Not, you know, every personality goes with everybody. I know I'm very much like bubbly. Let me follow you on Instagram and Facebook, and you can know my life and I can know your life, and I can kind of create my bucket list based off of everywhere that's going. But it's also, I'm pretty good about tailoring communication. If you prefer to text, I'm happy to text. A lot of times I do a go-to of voice chatting throughout the day. I think it's so quick. If you have an iPhone, like, hey, tell me I don't know, zip code for your drug screen or whatever it is. So Some travelers only want to talk on the phone. That is all they want to do. So it's like, here's my cell. You know, if you're going to call me after work, that's fine. But I do have 3 screaming young kids. So be mindful. You might hear them or they might hang up on you. But, you know, it's just, you have to find somebody that works, that fits, you know, into your personality, lifestyle, all of that stuff. And that's also available to you when something comes up. And then just find out what it is that you're looking for. Do you want a company that offers a 401k? There aren't a ton of travel companies that do 401k. Do you want like a specific area where maybe a client or maybe a particular agency has direct access to? Then maybe you go by that. So you want Alaska? Well, hey, there are certain companies that have a bigger or a stronger foothold on certain hospital chains in Alaska. So maybe find out who those are and talk with them. But it's just so much about your driving forces to wanting to travel. And then if you are a new grad, just be as open as possible. Right now, the market is super great, but you still want to have a good experience and go to a client that is going to make sure that your skill set is, you know, strong and that you're comfortable with what you're doing. And, you know, maybe just not be so focused on just a particular area or just a particular pay package, because it might really limit how good of an experience you have or just how much you're able to learn. So that's where I'm so big on just those first few contracts. Like, look at it, you know, look at everything. You just never know. Even if you're thinking, I don't really want to go to Iowa. Hey, that hospital is an awesome hospital. You want acute care experience. Like, just do me a favor and just interview, because I know when you interview, you're totally going to take the job. So there's just, you know, different nuggets like that I think are super important. And then obviously transparency is key. It's both ways, you know, it goes both ways, recruiter to traveler, traveler to recruiter. If I know that your number one job that you want has 2 other candidates that can start sooner, I'm going to tell you, you know, hey, our odds of getting this job are not super high because of X, Y, Z. Or, you know, flip side, hey, recruiter, I actually had another recruiter reach out to me about that job, and so I submitted with them. I'm really sorry, but can you send me what else you have in Oregon? That it's just important to be able to have that communication, so that way we know. There have been times that I've lost a traveler and they told me, hey, I want these 5 states, you know, send me everything within those 5 states. So I do that. And then a week later, they're like, oh, I booked in New York. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know you wanted New York. And so I have learned to just totally, when I see something that I think could work for some random reason, it might be totally out of the blue to you, but I'm sending it to you for a reason. So I'm just doing that, I guess, because I'm kind of trying to expand what you're looking for too, or you told me a particular, you know, I love dry needling clinics or kinesio taping, or, you know, I don't know, just these random things. And then I see that in the order and I'm like, hey, yeah, you want to go to South Dakota? You know, so I think just being really transparent about what you're looking for, and, you know, it's okay to have more than one recruiter and to have a good relationship with them both and like them both and flip-flop companies. All of that is okay, and it's kind of part of the process.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
All right, here are my tips. So number one, this is so important for me, and we keep on talking about it. It's determine why you're looking for each assignment. What's your goal for each assignment? Do you want to make money? Do you want your location? Do you want to work at a specific facility? And have realistic expectations. So in reality, out of those 3 things, money, location, and facility, you're really lucky to get 2 out of 3 of those. If you can get 3 out of 3, that is like a unicorn package. So really think about what you want in each assignment, because it helps create your mindset. Like, and then the whole assignment, you can think, I'm here, these are my goals because of this. So if you're in maybe a crappy place or a crappy building, but you're there to make money, you can stay focused on your goals. I'm here to make money. I'm here to make money. Or if you're in a place like Hawaii where you're not going to make good money, but you're working a good job and it's a good location and you're short of money, you can think, okay, well, this is my goal. This is why I'm here. And you can always switch goals every 3 months. So I think it's good to be focused on what you want for each assignment. I also agree with all of what Kalie already said about finding a recruiter or recruiters that work for you and you can trust, somebody that supports you and has your back in the travel therapy world. I see a lot of people out there trying to be these like lone wolves in the travel therapy world and kind of like go through recruiters left and right, thinking like they're the ones winning. They're like, oh, I'm going to get this, like something out of this person, and then I'm going to ditch them and leave. And in reality, the best relationships I see with travelers and recruiters are the ones who have been working in the long term, because they build relationships where the recruiter can get more things for you the more like they know and trust you. So for example, if this like wonderful new client reaches out to like Kalie or MedTravelers, and MedTravelers like really wants to impress them with a good client and they really want to pay well, like that recruiter can help get you pushed into a job with like a bigger pay. Like they could push for you to get a bigger pay. And a lot of it is kind of based on like trust. And when you're just starting with a new company, like a recruiter might not know, is this person even going to show up to the job? Is this person going to make it through 13 weeks? So to be somebody that your recruiter can trust, and then be then your recruiter somebody you can trust, that can work in both of your benefits to get better jobs, better negotiations, all those things. And truly just enjoy the journey. What might seem like stressful or hard at the time, you're just going to look back on it and it's going to be nothing. And in fact, it's going to help you in your journey. To bring it back to what I said in the beginning of the presentation, I see so many things possible now because of travel therapy that I never thought were possible 10 years ago. And so much of it is just that I've grown so much along the way, and that all these little things that stressed me out at the time that were really hard have made me a really strong and independent person. So now things that are hard, I know at the end of the day, it's all part of the journey, and it's making me a stronger person, and mistakes are things you can learn from. So that is our presentation, and I'm excited now because if anybody wants to unmute, you can. We can have a chat, but I wanted to start to get into some of the questions that you guys left. And the first one I see from Jenna about, she's working mostly in acute care, and is it realistic to be able to get consistent jobs in acute care inpatient? And I think Kalie kind of hit on this, which is that acute care and inpatient are going to be the hardest places to find jobs probably. But if you're super flexible, like if that's your number one thing, if all you want is acute care and you would go to any state or get any amount of money to work in acute care, you could probably do back to back. But if you have other things, like if you have, and actually I'm gonna stop my screen share. If you have, if you want a certain amount of money or a certain location, then it's gonna be a lot harder. And then the next question from Larissa is kind of similar. She has limited SNF experience, spent the majority of her career in pediatric outpatient. Will that be a hindrance? What do you think, Kalie, for somebody with SNF experience that's majority done pediatric outpatient?
Yeah. Larissa, are you an SLP or?
Yeah, SLP.
Okay. Yeah. So it can be a bit of a transition for sure. There are SNFs that will train, so where you will have another SLP on site, and they're kind of going to get you comfortable with swallowing and all of that sort of stuff. But we just like to be super particular, because if you have mainly pediatric outpatient going to kind of medical adults, it can really be a big like adjustment, career wise, especially in skill set. So that's where our clinical managers also come into play, because they can kind of walk you through any sort of scenario, sometimes send training modules on certain things, or tell you which CEUs to enroll into and stuff like that. But I would just honestly hone in on some of my very favorite SNFs, if that's where you wanted to go, and see if any of them were available, because I'm kind of a little more particular than most, I guess I would say. And I just like to make sure that anybody that's going from peds to like full-blown medical adults, like I just don't throw you into the wolves. Like there's a lot of places that would take you, but I don't know that all of them would really be fully supportive of the transition.
Yeah, that's a good point, is that a lot of SNFs, they might accept you as a traveler, but then, okay, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And I know I've been called in as a traveler for like, I've been called in as a traveler to train another traveler. Like a SNF realized they hired a school SLP with no experience in dysphagia, and then hired another traveler to train that traveler. Like that's just, yeah. So the places might hire you, but you want to go for the places that are actually going to train you.
Yeah.
And work with you. I think.
Yeah, and the compact question there.
Yeah.
So the one thing with the compact is that you have to make sure that your home state is part of the compact and actively issuing. So I think sometimes people think like, oh, you know, I'm going to get a license in a compact state and then I'll be compact eligible. It doesn't quite work like that. Your home state has to be actively issuing and a part of it. But it makes it just, I don't know, 20, 50, 100 times easier. There's so many compact jobs right now, several hundred. And the website, ptcompact.org, it kind of shows you the state breakdown. You can even look and just see, hey, I want to go to Arizona. Okay, it's a $45 fee and I need to do the jurisprudence test. Or I want to go here and all I have to do is pay the fee and I get it immediately. But it opens up the opportunity as long as we have on your profile, like, hey, this is a compact PT. I mean, clients just love it. And they're like, top of the list, because we know we won't ever have a licensing delay.
I got sent a question privately about, and this is a good question. So how often do you get let go early from a contract? So this person is working, she's a new grad working, it sounds like at a SNF, and it sounds like the manager is doing something that I've had a lot of managers do to me, which is like interview perm hires and then kind of mention it to you like, oh, we're interviewing for your job, we're interviewing for your job. So the question is, how often do you get cut early due to perm hire? And then, you know, what should her response be in all this time? And I have to say, I've been through this a lot. And at this point in my career, I'm just like, okay, give me my notice whenever you're going to let me go. Because honestly, it's not worth stressing out about. We're travelers, and this is part of our job. Part of our job is that in most situations, a facility is going to be actively looking for a perm hire. And if they give you your notice, then that's what happens and you move on to the next one. I would say I've been cut in 10 years. I've done probably at least 30 contracts. I've happened to be cut maybe like 2 or 3 times, and not by a lot, maybe by like 2 weeks or a month, which I felt was kind of petty at the time. Like, you couldn't really let me work 2 weeks. But again, you know, it's just kind of keep your thoughts to yourself. Like, this is your job. Like, that it's literally your job to do temporary staffing. So some people get, it's just luck. I feel like some people are on really bad streaks where they get cut all the time, and then some people can go for years and never get cut.
Totally.
Yeah, but it's, I don't know, how often would you, Kalie, would you say your travelers get cut from assignments? Because you see a bulk of people.
For sure. So school SLPs, virtually never. It's
that's true.
It's our lowest cancellation rate. Like less than probably 2%. I mean, it never happens. Like you sign on for, you know, the 40, 42 week contracts and you are there. So I think sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to sign a really long lease. Am I really going to be here? School, even if it's PT or OT school jobs too, they are just virtually, the cancellation rate is almost 0. SNF is where it's the highest, I would say. Most of them are 2 week notices with those skilled nursing chains. They can be tough. And I would say about maybe 10% of the time. But it does seem that travelers, like I have travelers that have worked for me for 6, 7 years now, and they've never gotten a notice. And then I have the new grad traveler that, you know, booked their first assignment, gets a notice week 3 or 4, and I'm like, dang it. And then I go to rebook them and then they get another notice and I'm like, this really is not the way it is, you know, usually. So sometimes it's just truly the luck of where we're booking you, and it's not your performance or anything like that. But overall, like when we're looking from a weekly perspective at cancellations versus bookings, I'd say it's probably less than 10%.
Yeah, I probably had 10% or less of my contracts be canceled.
Yeah,
for sure. It's something you have to be aware of. It's another reason why, like, you might consider doing agency sponsored housing, or why I would never ever recommend signing more than a month-long lease. You know, you would sign like month-by-month leases. It's for things like that, but it's kind of a part of that high risk, high reward job that we were talking about, that it can happen. And I try not to let it stress me out, because it used to, and I would have a lot of managers who would always bring it up, and I think they just wanted that, you know, like anxiety, like they wanted to make me nervous. But at the end of the day, like most of the people who were talking about it never ended up canceling me. And if it happens, it's going to happen. There's nothing you can do to prevent it. So,
yeah.
And then somebody asked about what to do about housing in between contracts. You're responsible for your own housing. So if you're in between contracts, you're responsible for paying your own housing. If you're in company housing, they'll probably make you exit the company housing and you would have to find your own housing. Or if you're in your own housing, you could just extend it.
Yeah. And, you know, something else like about that too is you still need to maintain a tax home when you are traveling. So sometimes a lot of travelers between contracts, they do go back home and they visit that tax home and just kind of keep it, you know, they have some debit card, you know, just to be able to track it. Like if the IRS were to hypothetically ever audit you, which I've never had one traveler audited. I mean, I've never even heard of it really. I'm in 8 years, like it just doesn't happen. But you still want to be on the up and up. You're getting tax-free money and stuff like that. So a lot of travelers between contracts, they do go home just to show that they're not abandoning their tax home, and that they still have ties to it and they see family, or, you know, whatever it is. That way they're not really incurring an expense somewhere else, you know, just to be like anxiously waiting for a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the tax portion of travel can be a whole nother webinar. There's a lot to talk about there, but that's I think that's all the questions we got. You guys have anything else you want to chat about before we go?
Anybody have any questions? Speak up, don't be shy.
Okay, well, thanks guys. Thanks for coming. It seems like this has recorded the whole time too, so I can download that and try to maybe get it on like a little private YouTube if you want to rewatch this, or we'll see. I'll figure out how it's going to take a long time to download this. This is a big file. So, well, thank you guys. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Thank you so much. This was so helpful.
Oh,
Let
great.
us know if you need anything or have any questions. That's what we're here for.
Kalie dropped her email address too if you need her. So this is mine's if you need mine. Yeah, thanks guys. Oh, I just sent that privately. Somehow I got in a private chat.
Bye guys.
Bye. All right, I'll end the meeting.